fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons. Like diamonds, we are back. I've got the man, Z-Man as they call him, Mark Zona. Welcome to the show, brother.
You know what's interesting is I had a producer at ESPN back in the day.
Yeah.
And he would always come onto the set and scream, "Energy up, guys." That is how you come into a podcast right there.
Are you kidding me? I wanted to come in with that because if you've watched your show at all and you get so amped every time, even if it's not a big bass, like, are you kidding me? I love it. So thank you. I'm learning from the pro here, dude.
We're going hunting later tonight, and I'm hoping that energy can build into the afternoon, is what my plan is.
First and foremost, I want to thank Joseph Brumley. He's one that made this happen. And so kind of give everyone a backstory. The podcast is called Salt Strong Fishing. The word salt kind of insinuates saltwater fishing. You thought the same thing when the email came across.
Just to give a quick cliff notes of it, Joe works at a local post office, and my wife does obviously a lot, brings a lot of mail, a lot of packages. And she said, "Hey, I talked to Joe. Do you want to be on Salt Strong?" And I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" but with that said, the small, very small credibility I have in the saltwater fishing arena is I did host Redfish Cup back in the day on ESPN2.
Yes.
Now, I did not know what I was talking about, but I was the host of the Redfish Cup.
That's pretty funny. Well, here's kind of how this whole thing happened. We sent a survey out to our members. We have a private Facebook group of 62,000 fishermen, and then we have a more exclusive membership where it's a paid membership of now we had over 10,000 members, and we sent them 2 different surveys asking, what do you want to see in 2020? And like this one theme that kept coming up over and over again was bass fishing. And I told you this offline, I'm the CEO of the company, and I live in Winter Haven, Florida, the Chain of Lakes, which is like smack dab in the dead center. And I think there's a ton more guys and gals like me who might live across the street from a pond or a lake and still love saltwater fishing, but it's just so much more accessible. And it makes sense if you look at the country, right? And I was like blown away. Like all these people wanted bass fishing. We had Bill Dance on that actually went live yesterday, which was just awesome. And he's been so helpful. He did a little course with us on using technology, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But it's been so cool. And so Joseph was part of the survey, and he's like, "Hey, would you like to get Zona on?" I was like, "Well, heck yeah, do you know him?" And that's the whole thing happened. So Joseph, if you're listening, thank you, dude.
Yes, good man. And I can highly relate. It's weird because I've seen it in 2 different categories in the outdoor industry. Professional hunters want to be professional fishermen, and vice versa. Professional fishermen want to be professional hunters. But I've really noticed it in a lot of and some of the biggest names in inshore saltwater fishing. Their passion is they want to come up smallmouth fishing with me. And I'm like, don't leave where you're at. Trust me when I say that. It's nice up where I live for like 9 days a year. So the window is very small to come do this with me.
So like, where are you right now? Where do you live?
We're in Michigan. If you're looking at the state of Michigan, we are right down in the southwest corner.
Okay.
And I pretty much, I grew up in Chicago, but we used to come up here when I was a kid during the weekends. I started fishing tournaments when I was about 9 years old on the lake that I'm looking at, where really I've kind of lived here basically my whole life. So
And you've
got all come full circle.
And you've got kids now, twins, right? Is that right?
I do. Twin boys that they go up to Michigan State. And, boy, they're studying hard. I could tell from the pictures on the weekend. But they actually they're juniors at Michigan State and also coming down to hunt with me next week.
Cool. So they're in the outdoors, fishing, hunting. Cool.
Yes. I think it's probably been pushed. I don't want to use the word pushed, but it's all that they've been around.
Yeah.
You know, like what's weird, and I don't want to be a name dropping dude, but like if we go pontoon, you know, we go out on the pontoon boat on the 4th of July and we're casting off the front with Kevin Van Dam. I don't think they truly know the magnitude of that.
Yeah.
But they've been around, and what's funny is they for the years and years that they fished tournaments together, they picked it up quick. You know, what's funny is, I've always said this for natural fishermen, you either got it or you don't. And if you don't, you just have to work harder and harder and harder and harder. But there are two kids that, you know, basically they held a rod since they were 2 years old. So they picked it up pretty quick and had a really nice college career fishing. And
you were kind of like that from what I've read, right? Like you were doing tournaments before you were 10 or something crazy.
Yeah, I started. I started fishing tournaments when I was 9 years old, and it was funny. I hunt with a guy, and I was talking to him yesterday, and I said, "Man, just ditch work, and come hunting with me today." And he goes, "No," he said, "I gotta be responsible, Zona." And I said, "Look, my being irresponsible gave me a career. You never know where it leads." So, but back in the day when I would get in trouble in high school and college for fishing is because there was no high school or college fishing back in the day. So knock on wood, I did finish college and got everything wrapped up.
Yeah.
It took a lot longer, though, than it was supposed to.
I understand. And
yes.
How cool is it that the kids that are born right now or even going into high school have the chance to do that and compete in high school and even get stinking scholarships in college? It's the coolest thing ever for fishing.
It's bizarre. I'll tell you, I remember covering now this will date me, but I remember covering with Tommy Sanders the very first college event on ESPN2, and we had 9 boats. And they were 9 boats, and it was so raw and pure and good, but we had 9 boats. And I remember looking at Tommy Sanders and I said, "Boy, this whole college bass fishing thing, this is not going to work." Well, I nailed that one.
You said that on air?
No, I told him right when we wrapped the show up. I said, "Well, thank God that's behind us. We don't have to worry about ever hosting a college tournament again." And what's funny is, you saw pockets throughout the country, Joe, and you know this, and your viewers know this. You saw pockets where it would groundswell and got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger from high school to college, to now you see junior bass fishing. I made the comment to Sanders. I said, my goal is to commentate in elementary bass tournaments before it's all said and done.
I love it.
Right. And don't get me wrong, we do in a weird way. See what I was doing? I was throwing a dagger right there. But it's been, you know, what's funny is, and I've said this in other interviews I've done, I really believe this. I think one of the most cliche BS terms that you hear in this industry is you growing the sport. And you hear that used so much when
you don't like that term.
Well, I like that term if it actually makes sense and applies.
Okay.
And to me, high school and college fishing actually do that. They actually grow the sport. When you hear that, hey, we're expanding the field in this circuit or that circuit, dude, that didn't grow the sport. It grew it by 20 boats. Give me a break, bro. But I truly believe that high school and college are number one, they're critical, and number two, they actually do that. They grow fishing.
And to me, I just turned 41, and I've been on some other podcasts, and the question has come up, like, what's one of my biggest fears? And I have 2 young daughters and a 3-year-old boy, so mine are a little bit younger than yours.
Boy, you are a breeder.
Yeah, and I think we're officially done now. Very fertile guy.
Right.
So the answer was, my fear is that my kids are not going to have the same opportunity I did. And not only that, in terms of fisheries and the opportunity to go out there and catch fish, but it's going to be uncool. Like when I grew up here in Winter Haven, Florida, went to Winter Haven High School. We were fishermen. Like, we got a canoe, and then we got to 10 or 11, we got our first John boat that we had to mow yards for. And then we got a bass boat, and like, that's what we did. And all of our friends did it, and all the cool kids did it. And you see my point, where now you're almost like, we had this girl Chasten on the show, who's a female angler. And I mean, she gets bullied and made fun of and harassed because it's not as cool to be an angler anymore. In some parts of the country, like some people in high school fishing think like, man, that's the complete opposite of what I'm experiencing. But that's a big fear that I see for my kids. And some of it's the devices, meaning, just always being connected and always having to be in front of a screen. And some of it's just, it's the sport. Is it growing, right? To your point, like, is it really growing for these young kids? It's, at some point, you're not going to be dead, and this next generation is going to be the ones, in front of a camera, inspiring people to go out there and fish.
Joe, in all honesty, I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes. It is growing. Okay. And here's what I grew up in the South Side of Chicago. That's a rough area. And it's weird you say that girl got bullied. My friends used to make fun of me all the time for bass fishing.
Huh.
And
because it just wasn't big where you were?
No, it was nothing. It was nothing.
And you were a freak. You were a freak about it.
A freak.
Like, you would love, okay.
14, 15, 16, and your growing curve when you're 15, 16, 17 is a lot faster on the South Side of Chicago. Because there's a lot of negatives. There's a lot of positives growing up in a city. There's a lot of negatives. And what's interesting is 2 things. Is bass fishing got me away from negatives. And there was a lot of them. And a lot of those kids that were my friends that would make fun of me for fishing keep in touch with me now and ask if I'll take them fishing, if that makes it's so bizarre. But the other side about it to me is covering the Bassmaster or doing Zona show. I speak to so many more high school teenage anglers today than I did. This is back before television 20 years ago. I was still in the fishing industry. I never spoke to as many kids as I talk to now about fishing, which tells me in some way, shape, or form, there are more involved in it right now. I believe that. I really do.
I love it. I believe that's happening in certain pockets, to your point. And I love hearing that, because that's a big part of our mission, is getting more families, getting more friends, and then ultimately getting more kids out there.
And this is no BS. And I'm not saying this to sound dorky or cliche, but one thing I've always told my kids this. Look, my kids hang around bass heads. They hang around kids that are fishing and fishing and fishing. But I always told my kids, pass fishing on to somebody that would otherwise not do it. Whether you take a kid that's in high school to a local pond, on a golf course, a local farm pond, or you take them on your fishing boat, I truly believe it's our job, people that live in hunting and fishing, to introduce it, not to a person, not the cousin in your family that goes 20 times a year.
Right.
But once a year, take somebody out that you might not would have done that. And that helps the whole machine. I really believe that. And I try to pass that on to my family to do that.
I love it, man. And speaking of that, you've done a good job with this. You've taken, and I know you've done a lot in the fishing world and in the broadcast fishing world. And let's face it, a lot of these younger people, they've cut the cord. We cut the cord. When we moved to this new house, we no longer, we don't have the TV. So I'm not watching traditional old school fishing TV shows like I did, probably like you did growing up, watching the Bill Dances of the world on Saturday mornings. And I saw your live show. It happened to be on I'm looking at my other screen here. It was on my like YouTube suggested videos, and it had a funny thumbnail. And I knew who you were. I heard your name, but I never seen the live. And I was like, I'll check this out. And dude, not in a million years if someone told me I was going to spend an hour and a half of my night, like at 10:30 at night, and I couldn't stop watching it. It was the one with you and Seth, and you're shaving his head. Like that was towards the end. And you guys didn't even like kill it in the beginning. It was kind of a slow bite in the beginning, but it was funny. Like, and it was like, this feels so, I know it is live, but it felt really live. Like I was right there. And like, I was like, holy crap. And my congrats to you is like that, in my eyes, is reaching an entire new generation of people who are watching YouTube instead of, an actual TV up on a wall. And dude, it sucked me right. I was like, this is like the future of getting young kids in. Like, this is awesome.
It's weird. My television show on Outdoor Channel is still my motor. It's still, it's the machine that it still feeds the rest of the branches. But what's interesting about the live aspect, and we talked about this off the air, I remember the first one. I remember number one, where it really derived from was we were covering Bassmaster tournaments live. I was like, and I thought to myself, boy, can we do a live fishing show? Which at the time, a few of my very close friends in the industry, they're like, I don't know if that's a real good idea with you. I have a tendency to have to be edited out a lot. You know what I mean? And the other side is, I don't know why I made it 4 hours. 4 hours is actually, that's a long show.
It's a big commitment.
It does not need to be 4 hours. But the other things that I learned about it is it has to be a controlled playing field. We rely on cell service for it to head up to a satellite, then it goes all over the web. You can't be on Lake Gunnersville or on the Harris Chain and be like, hey, we're going to make a 20-mile run. You can't do that.
Yeah. So
you have to have a lot of fish in a very, very confined area, which the only way to really do that is correct time of year, correct body of water, where all the conditions kind of apply. And we've learned a lot of that on the fly. And I'll tell you, it's been a very unique challenge. We're gonna end up doing a lot more of those, and I'll always live by something I told you. It's been very high risk, low reward is what that little show has become.
How much pre-trip planning and pre-fishing are you doing? I mean,
that's probably the hardest part, because here's what sucks about it, but here's also what's great about it is I could go right out front. I can go right out front here and find the mother load. And I have a little app right on my phone where I test upload download speed for my production trailer, for our production trailer in Little Rock, Arkansas, because that's the hub. Wherever I'm at, there's a production trailer there. And I could find a load of fish. I could find 500 bass school, and I have zero cell service. Zero. Can't do it there. But when you do find it, and it comes together, there was one that I did with Van Dam and it was like my second or third one, and I'm nervous and blah blah blah. And he was coming back from Texas, and a cold front hit, and we were going to have massive winds. And to do a live broadcast when it's really windy, it's almost impossible. So I went to a really small lake in Michigan, and I found the biggest school of big Michigan largemouth that I've ever found in my life. And I've chased bass in Michigan since I was 4 years old. And I remember Van Dam getting home, and he's like, "Where are we going?" I said, "Well, we're going to, X Lake." And he looks at me, he goes, "That lake sucks." And I said, "Oh, no, it's going to be good. Don't say it sucks. That's not helping me mentally right now." Long story short, we went out and had one of the best largemouth bass days that we have both ever had in the state of Michigan. And that's when it's beautiful. But where it sucks, here's where it sucks. I was on Lake St. Clair with Jordan Lee, and we did one, and I had a school a quarter mile away. I could stare at it. I'd look at my waypoint, and it had 0 cell service where that school was at. That's where the challenge is. Kind of, they peak at times, but it's been a very cool learning gig, and surely more to come. But I appreciate it. It's been really fun doing those.
So speaking of that, because that would scare the heck out of me. I like to have, you always want to have a controlled, studio, if you will. Live is scary. I remember my very first Facebook Live, I was scared to death, and I shouldn't have been, but I was. What scares you? What worries you with all this, whether you broadcast or not?
What's weird is I've done a lot of live television, talking and blah blah blah. That's fine because it goes, out, gone. When it's behind you, it's behind you. But what's weird is I'm very in my regular show, my show on television. We goof around and we have fun, but I want to pound them. I want somebody to go, yeah, those knuckleheads had a good time, but they caught them. They drilled them.
Yeah.
I have that same competitive. Now I don't fish tournaments anymore. I have that same weird competitive drive when I do a live that I want somebody at the end of 4 hours to go, dude, they blasted them. And that's what raises the stress because here's the thing, talking and not catching for 4 hours, that's a hard proposition, brother. That is not easy.
No.
And I'll have a tendency when I get bored, that's when you have to start editing things out because I really start speaking what's going through my head. I remember my wife saying when I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to do a live fishing show." She goes, "Oh, I don't think you want to do that." she has seen a lot of the, but I would say the probably where, look, in a 30-minute edited television fishing show, here's what doing a live show has done to a show that airs on television. Whenever I go tape a regular Zona show that's going to air on TV, it is so relaxed now where I'm like, all right, I can dive in, I can figure it out, I got a clean slate. When a live starts, it's weird, before we go live, you're sitting there wondering, where is this going? Where is this going? But knock on wood, you need to, I guess here's the best way to put it. The stress level comes from making sure that you can control every variable possible and let it rest. What's funny is the one that you're talking about, Seth. That was one of them that it started incredibly slow and then built, and by the end of it, we were pounding them.
Yeah.
And that was a real technique driven one. We just switched techniques halfway through, and that's when it started happening. But that's a little bit the beauty of a live show. You get to see those little bitty tweaks in fishing that either bring success or terrible failure.
I want to completely switch it up. And we have a lot of young people, which is cool, that listen and chime in. And we've done a couple podcasts where we talk about how to make a living in the fishing world, regardless of if it's working for a tackle company or a trolling motor company, power pole, whatever. And one thing I saw, I always try to do some research before I talk to people so I don't look like an idiot. And one thing that you said that stood out to me was the question to you was like, what's some great advice for the high school, college kids trying to get in? And you basically said what I would hope you say is like, don't be an idiot and try to ask for sponsors. And one thing that you said that was powerful was communication, right? And I almost look at, professional fishing, almost like professional baseball player, right? You could be the best player in the world and you're not going to be playing the sport and getting paid millions of dollars at 40, 50, 60 years old, maybe even not even 30, right? I mean, I lost you there for a second.
There we go.
You're back. You're back. It's one of NFL, right? I know you're a Bears fan. I mean, even if you're the best player in the field, you're not going to last that long. But if you can communicate, you can be an announcer. You can do a million different things. And I feel like you've maximized that to the fullest, right? I mean, you could be doing this until you're 70, 80, 90 years old because you learn how to communicate well.
Joe, I was so off when I went through high school and college. I was out of whack.
What do you mean by that?
All I wanted to do was fish. That's all I wanted to do. Look, if I had a jig in my hand, I was like, man, I can make money. I can make money. And when it started, tournaments really got going through my late teens and early 20s to my mid 20s. And then you meet a hottie that you marry and you're like, wow, my bills just went up a little bit.
A little bit.
You're right. Then you have a couple twins, So what, here's where I was off and here's where I was out of whack is my parents said, hey, we'll support, you fishing locally around here if you just graduate college. We're not looking for a 4-year degree. Get a 2-year degree so you've got some piece of paper. And I'm like, man, I'm good at skipping boat docks. I don't need a piece of paper. But you also want to make your parents happy. And I did. I have no problem saying this. I dropped out of college. I dropped out and I was fishing tournaments, working on the side. And I don't know what made me do it, but I went back. And when I went back, I went in a speech and communications class. And I was horrified. One of my dogs loves this story.
Yeah, man. I've had my 4-year-old daughter walk through the door and ask for a piece of gum. Like,
what happens next? So I went back to college and I took speech and communications classes, and I was mortified to speak in front of a crowd.
Wow.
And what's funny is to this day, I still get crazy anxiety speaking in front of a crowd. You could tell me that there's 1.2 million people watching on ESPN. That doesn't bother me looking into a camera. But when I'm in front of, and looking back on it now, that's where things got right for me in the industry. That goofy, small speech and communications class in a community college, I'm 1,000% positive I would not be doing what I do for a living, what I've done for the last 2.5 decades, if I would not have taken that one little night class.
Wow, that's powerful, man. I'll share something similar because I feel like there's someone listening to this that probably needs to hear this and it could impact their life. So I had debilitating anxiety attacks and really all through my entire 20s and into my 30s, to the point where, and it was like a godsend that I got a job doing phone sales. So I worked in a cubicle on a phone like this. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could go right into my little cubicle and everything was over the phone. And I had the opportunity to speak to a little group of, I was selling, so I knew how to talk to people and sell stuff, but I was deathly afraid to get in front of someone. And someone had mentioned the Dale Carnegie speaking course. It's like a 2-day, you go there 2 days, you pay like $1,600. And I did it. I spent my own money. And dude, I had so many anxiety attacks. I couldn't even like complete the 2-day course. Like I remember sitting in the parking lot. I mean, I can laugh about it now, but dude, it was miserable. And I was like, and I paid all this money. Like, dude, I was vested. I was in. Like, I couldn't do it. And years later, I went back and did it again. Less anxiety, and that, I mean, literally changed my life. Like, and I say that because a lot of people look at guys like you and me. I'm on a podcast. We got, millions and millions of views on YouTube as well. And they probably think it's just natural. And it was not natural at all. I was definitely, and I still get afraid. I still get nervous speaking. And I share that just to say that you aren't alone if you're going through that, and do a course like that. And you don't have to spend $1,600 like I did, but take a little college course, community college class. It could be game changing. And I'm sure you're telling your kids that, right? Learn how to speak.
I'm religious about telling them communication in your life. If you can communicate in some way, shape, or form, you will be successful in life. If you cannot communicate in so many facets, isn't that right, Karen? In so many facets that you will epically fail in life. But to this day, it's interesting listening to your story about that. I could walk in, I speak at a lot of junior highs and high schools, and when I could be in a room with 8 children, and I am mortified and still dripping sweat.
I am with you.
Yes.
I had to speak at a church I guess it was 6 months ago, and they ended up deciding to do it outside. And this was June. So it's outside, middle of Florida, hot as can be.
Dripping.
And I'm already nervous. And I'm speaking in front of 14, 15-year-olds. And dude, I am talking like completely soaking wet, sweating.
Yes.
1, it was hot, but 2, I was just so nervous. So guys, you ain't alone. But this day and age, man, if you can communicate when all the other knuckleheads are stuck to a phone, I was trying to find mine, but it's on the ground, and have zero communication skills, you will excel and do well regardless of what you do. So I'm glad we went down that route. You never know. You never know what's going to happen here on the podcast, Mark. Self-help, fishing. You just never know. You back? I lost you for a second. It froze.
I just had a bad connection right there.
Oh God, I was going to have to keep talking, just like you have to do in your live events, hoping everyone was still listening.
There we go. See, I'm back now. We're perfect.
Yes.
So what was the laugh?
Yes. And I was saying, you never know what's going to happen on these shows. It's going to turn into a self-help talk or bass fishing. You just never know, man.
Yeah, I know we're going to run into one of these times. We're going to get burned, but I'll be ready for it. The more of the live shows that I do, the more prepared I am for it. So like I said, there'll be a bunch more coming, but it's definitely been fun. And it was weird. You and I talked about it off the air. It's been a very healthy challenge, because it's actually taught me a lot more about my actual television show, that when you've got 12 hours to go out and tape, you don't need to stress, because if you've got 12 hours, something good's going to happen.
So how often are you doing shows? Like, I don't know how many episodes you have. And
I do 12 Zona shows for Outdoor Channel. I do 12 Bass Pro Shop shows, about 10 to 12 Bassmaster shows for ESPN, and then I'll do 4 to 6 live ones a year.
Dang.
But we're actually we're talking about a new project that's going to possibly be mid 2020. So altogether, probably 40 to 50 shows a year. Yeah.
Dang. Can you?
That's enough. That's plenty. I'm good.
Can you tease what's coming up in 2020?
Not quite yet. No,
okay,
it'll be similar, same but different. But it's not going to be 4 hours long. I can promise that.
But they're good. Like I said, I never in a million. I don't know how long that one with Seth was. I remember it hitting an hour and a half or 2 hours, but it was enjoyable. Like I wanted to keep watching it. And then when the whole shaving the head, then I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, this is awesome.
Yes, we ran into one issue. I did one with Chris Zaldane last year, a Zona Live, and I did it on Lake Huron. And I found a wicked school of smallmouth, big ones, many, and it was magical. And I got it all set up the day before. My crew came in and set perfect cell service, and it was in a discharge. And the discharge was a barge bay. And I remember waking up that morning. We get to Lake Huron. The big lake is 5 to 8 footers, but in the discharge, it's dead calm. The one time in my lifetime that morning, there is a 200-foot freighter in that barge stall blocking it. At 6 in the morning, we're going live at 8. And I'm staring at it, and now here's the problem. I can't go into Lake Huron because there's 8-foot waves.
You're stuck.
I am 200 feet from the holy land of smallmouth, but there is a freighter in my way. And there's a guy up on, I'll never forget it. It backed out for no given reason and went in the other barge stall. And I'm like, what just happened? It was like the gates of Valhalla just opened. But here's the weird thing. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, and I called the crew. I called my wife at 6 a.m. I'm like, pull the plug. I called the crew. I'm like, pull the plug. And all of a sudden I saw him back out. I'm like, we're back on. We're doing it. And it worked out great. It was one of our best lives we've ever done.
Oh, man, that's awesome. All right. So we always promise that there is some sort of fishing tip or intel. And I'm selfishly curious because, we spend all of our time teaching saltwater fishing. We're more, redfish, snook, trout, flounder. We're the inshore side of things. I live on a lake. I do okay, but I am not consistent at catching bass. What are some tips late fall, winter, when this, we're recording this? What are some just all around tips, lures? What kind of depth are they? What kind of structure are they hanging around? And I know you love largemouth and smallmouth, and maybe they're similar in terms of, I don't know. I'm not a smallmouth guy at all. So,
really what I've learned fishing throughout the entire country is a lot of, especially smallmouth, is, and this is thought of a lot of times at redfish, when you're red fishing, you go to Punta Gorda and you're fishing very pressured fish, you tend to downscale, you tend to finesse. You downscale your line, you downscale your lures. Really what I've been doing the last half a decade is I go the polar opposite. Smallmouth is a very similar creature to a redfish. And it's thought of as finesse, light line. Throw all that away. Throw the artillery at them. Throw big baits for them. If you're going out to catch a personal best and lift one up for social media, your odds are way bigger from throwing a bigger bait. And really,
what does that mean to you? What does a bigger bait mean?
Well, it's all relative in your world. A bait's that long, but I'm talking, throw a 6 to 8 inch bait for a smallmouth. Throw baits that big for a largemouth. Obviously, your numbers are going to go down, but that is nothing. That is nothing for a giant smallmouth bass to eat. And the other side is he does not see things like that thrown at him. And really, that's the one piece of advice is growing up, I used to read, and I'd be also the dude on TV that would tell you, downscale your line, downscale, blah, blah, blah. If you want to catch giants, upscale everything you can.
Love it. And what is there a certain type of structure, depth that they're hanging around, or a temperature? Like I said, I am clueless when it comes to finding schools of bass.
You know what's weird is to me, a truly big bass, a trophy, a 10-pound largemouth, a 6-pound smallmouth is, number one, they're like a big buck. They are. Whether you're a big buck in Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, a truly big bass has a tendency to hang alone. When it seems that when a bass gets out of that 4 and 5 pound range, and when he gets bigger, he becomes a loner. It's very similar to my life. I'm not saying that jokingly. And not only that, he will use the absolute, similar to a trophy deer, he will use the thickest, nastiest jungle cover that is not penetrated by two things: predators generally, or fishermen. And that's the one thing that, and I've kind of passed that on to my boys. Even though it's a pain and it's a lot more hard work, fish zones, fish areas where it's a struggle for you to get to, because he lives there. The boogeyman lives there. And that, if you live by that, fish the heaviest cover you can. Don't be scared to throw a big bait. Something you are going to hit. You're going to strike out, but you're going to hit a home run.
Fish the gnarly stuff.
Yes.
Love it, dude. This was so good. I know a lot of our members obviously want this. I feel like, it's funny. I think we're at episode 163, 4. So had a lot of guests on. Yeah, it's crazy. But what's funny, there's been a little trend, and I've had most of the big saltwater TV hosts on, and almost every single one of them started off, guess what? Bass fishing, or pan fishing. It was fishing from a bank, and it's like the gateway fish or gateway drug, where everyone starts it. But it's funny, I mean, the higher you go, it's kind of like when you mentioned being alone. The farther offshore you go, I know you guys use that term as well, but if you go out offshore, you're in a 7-figure boat, there's just not that many people, and eventually it all circles back, and next thing you know, you're on a bank teaching your grandson how to catch fish and bass and bluegills and brim. And anyhow, I think it's just so fascinating. And here I am, a guy that grew up in Winter Haven, and 20 years later, I'm back with kids trying to teach my kids how to catch bass. So it's the gateway fish to become a fisherman. I love it.
It's bass is weird, man. I've been very fortunate to chase a lot of different species, a lot, from saltwater to freshwater. But it's weird. I always come back to bass, whether it's largemouth or smallmouth. And I love them equally. I love largemouth and smallmouth equally, but I always come back to them. And I don't know if it's because that was the first thing that I chased when I was a kid, and still mentally I chase that feeling. But hey, you give me a bull shark in Key West or a bull red in Venice, Louisiana, I'm happy. That my ADD is getting it's getting quenched. but I always do. I come back to bass because a bass is it's everything in my life. It's everything that's ever been in my life. And what's weird is I owe that fish a lot. I owe that fish. Besides making a career, I'm convinced bass fishing 100% saved my life. Convinced of that.
In terms of growing up in South Chicago and getting in. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. That's awesome, man. Yep. I can't even try to beat that. What an end. What next, dude? What besides the thing you can't share with us in 2020? What's anything else? Any other big plans or massive goals the next 5-10 years?
I'm hoping my wife shoots a big, elusive, giant Michigan buck this evening.
Nice.
It would set up the. I'm a short-term planner.
You're thinking about tonight.
I'll be honest with you. the last 20 years, covering the Bassmasters and doing Zona show and trying stupid live shows and stuff like that. It's been a dream. I'm so lucky. But what's funny is you made a comment earlier that that people cut the cord and a lot of their consumption of what they enjoy, whatever it might be, is on a tablet, is on a phone and stuff like that. And it's weird that my career will somewhere land in that major transition, which a lot of that transition's right now.
Yeah.
And what's been funny is it's been a stressful but satisfying transition. You've seen kids heck, I saw you did an interview with I believe it was Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler. Yeah. Yep.
He didn't have to make that transition. He just went right. Somebody that's a dinosaur like myself. But it's been interesting to when this is all said and done, that I've been able to broadcast different things, whether it's been TV, whether it's been the internet or live internet stuff, and I'm going to be amazed by other folks that are doing that, 10 to 15 years from now when I'm long gone probably. So it's to be in that weird transition. I've been lucky because I've learned a lot. Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling you'll be around many, many years. And it's funny, like talking to Tyler, getting his perspective, because he's grown up with Wi-Fi since he can remember, right? I mean, the younger generations thinks TV's dead. And I remember ICAST at 2015 was like the first year that people were really talking about, like, man, TV's going to change. It's all going online. And here we are 4 years later. I think it's going to be a really, really long transition, because guess what?
Yes.
The dudes with money, like guys like my dad who are buying really nice boats, they're still watching TV, right?
Tell him I said thank you. So great. Yeah. I thank my parents also every day for keeping their television.
The people with a lot of money and kids out of college and spending a lot of cash on toys and stuff, they still be watching TV. So it's going to be a long transition. And clearly you're kind of, footing both sides, which is so cool. And I applaud you. And just making entertaining, man. You're catching fish, you're killing it, and keeping it fun. So tell everyone where to go follow you on social media, and obviously what times the shows air and all that.
It is markzona.com or Mark Zona Fishing on the Instagram, Zona's Awesome Fishing Show on the Facebook. And don't laugh at I don't know what time my show airs. That's horrible. But the nice thing is I do know that on the Outdoor Channel, it's on World Fishing Network all 4 quarters all year. But on Outdoor Channel, it's December to July every year. And I know it's every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but I have no idea what time it's.
Well, the good news is we do a big, massive blog post for every one of these episodes, and we will put all that in there. So
awesome. Yeah. I'm sure my wife knows in the other rooms.
I saw you kind of peeking around like, come on, help me out here, honey.
Yeah. Well, and this is a true statement. When the group and, the production group I work with and I'm done with editing the shows, I have had enough of listening to me, which I'm sure some of your viewers have.
I can't even imagine. I don't like listening to myself either. And then having to go listen to a 2 to 4 hour episode.
Yes.
That would be tough.
Yes. That's exactly my feeling with myself. So.
Well, brother, much love. This was a really, really fun interview. We could have gone another hour or two. But I know you got stuff to do. You got the dogs there, and good luck on the hunt tonight.
Thank you.
I'll be paying attention to your Instagram page to see what happens.
I have been staring out the window. The wind is correct, my friend. Thanks for having me on.
Nice. Everybody, please go follow Mark Zona, and we'll put a whole podcast show notes at saltstrong.com with links and everything. We be out, brother.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was past